The sea was calm as the aurora gently cut through the swirling gray waters off the coast of Oregon. Sara stood at the bow, binoculars in hand, scanning the horizon for any signs of life. She longed to see the graceful arc of a tail or the spout of a blowhole piercing the cold morning air. These were Sara's favorite conditions to spot whales, smooth seas and light winds. On mornings like this, the creatures would emerge from the depths to feed, playing and socializing at the surface. Sara lived for these moments, the chance to observe the whales in their natural habitat. She felt a deep connection to the animals, having devoted the past 5 years of her life to studying them. Sara tracked a flock of seagulls diving down, hoping they marked a pod of whales. But all she saw was a flash of silvery fish scattering as the birds plunged into the water. Sara sighed, her breath fogging in the chill air. She wouldn't give up her vigil yet. Today was too perfect for whale watching. As a marine biologist, Sara found pure joy in adding to the collective knowledge about the ocean and its elusive inhabitants. She worked for the local Marine Research Institute, which counted the gray whale as one of its specialties for study. Sara always felt honored that the massive creatures allowed her brief glimpses into their domain. The Pacific gray was a mysterious giant, reaching up to 50 feet long and weighing up to 40 tons. They migrated 5,000 miles each winter from their feeding grounds in the Bering and Chukchi seas, down to the warmer berthing lagoons of Baja. And every summer, the grays returned north to gorge themselves on tons of crustaceans and tube worms, fattening up for the long journey back south. Tracking their migration routes along the Pacific coast was Sara's latest project. She mapped everywhere the tagged whales stopped to rest and feed. She analyzed their behaviors, including how mothers with calves stuck closer to shore compared to the adventurous lone males. She photographed their broad flukes and unique markings, helping identify individuals in the population. On this expedition, Sara was accompanied by her research partner, Noah. He manned the small vessel while she observed. Noah also helped tag the whales with satellite trackers. He was due back any minute with a status report from checking their equipment. Sara's grants didn't provide much, but the Aurora got them around. She was an old whaling ship retrofitted for research. Her wooden planks creaked and groaned as the ocean swelled beneath them. But Sara loved the Aurora's character. In fact, she thought of the ship almost like a colleague, silently supporting their efforts to understand the whales the old girl had once helped hunt. "No whales spotted yet?" Noah's voice crackled over the radio. Sara jumped a bit at the sudden noise, piercing the calm. "Not yet, but it's still early," Sara responded into the mic. "How's everything looking down there?" "All equipment seems good to go." "I'd say we are." "Whoa, hang on." The boat suddenly pitched as a huge wave crashed over the bow, drenching Sara. She gripped the rail to keep from slipping on the slick deck. The calm weather had shifted, and fast. The sea boiled with building swells as a curtain of rain swept toward them. "Noah, get up here. We need to get back," Sara shouted into the radio. She knew these waters, and how hazardous storms could brew without much warning. "I'm trying, this storm's kicking up fast." "Just batten down, I'll steer us out," came Noah's garbled reply. Sara scrambled to secure anything loose on deck as the Aurora tilted sickeningly. Sheets of stinging rain soaked her clothes, blinding her. The old boat groaned as Noah gunned the engines against the building headwinds. They just needed to get far enough out to maneuver safely. But the tempest swelled too quickly. Sara's heart dropped as an enormous wave loomed over them. She had no time to grab hold before it crashed onto the deck, tossing her into the churning chaos. The torrent swallowed her in an icy grip as Sara was flung overboard. Adrenaline shot through her limbs as she kicked frantically upward. Her hands clawed for the quivering surface now far above her head. Lungs burning, Sara broke into the air with a gasping breath. But her relief was short-lived as the swells swamped her again. Sara tumbled in the freezing vortex, losing all sense of direction. Which way was up? Shadowy shapes swirled by her in the murk as she fought to stay conscious against the cold. She prayed Noah had noticed she went overboard. Just as her energy flagged, Sara felt something slide past her legs in the black waters. Had the storm churned up some debris? She kicked away, desperate to avoid getting tangled. But then the slippery shape curled around her ankle, firm and unyielding. Terror seized Sara in an icy grip colder than the ocean as she realized this was no debris. Something was grasping her, purposefully, pulling her steadily down into the pitch abyss. Sara thrashed with all her remaining strength, but whatever had her was inescapably strong. Lungs searing, Sara finally had to take an involuntary breath. Seawater flooded her chest in an agonizing surge. As her vision dimmed, the last thing Sara saw in the shadowy depths was a pair of glowing golden eyes gazing at her, mournful yet determined. Then, only darkness. A pressure squeezed Sara's chest, forcing the flood of seawater back out in ragged coughs. She convulsed weakly, limbs like lead. The cold embrace of the ocean still clung to her skin. Was she dead? Sara's bleary thoughts swirled in hazy confusion. Hard cobblestones pressed into her back. Sara pried her crusty eyes open, squinting against a green-tinged glow. She coughed more bitter fluid from her lungs. Each breath felt like inhaling shards of glass. Where was she? This definitely wasn't the aurora or the storm-tossed sea. Sara's vision swam into focus on a cave ceiling dripping with stalactites. Their pointed tips glimmered with an otherworldly light. Sara shifted, wincing at the ache in her bones. She lay on a narrow ledge just above the dark water lapping at its edge. Her clothes hung in tattered, soaked strips. Goosebumps pebbled her chilled skin. With great effort, Sara rolled onto her side. She had to find a way out of this cave and back to the surface. But how did she even get down here? Her memory held only chaotic fragments of the storm and drowning in the black depths. Sara's blood turned to ice as flashes came back, something wrapping around her legs, gleaming golden eyes. She hadn't imagined it. Something dragged her under, something that moved with purpose. Sara shuddered, peering into the obscure waters. They revealed nothing besides her own rippled reflection. She had to get away before that mysterious creature returned. Sara slid slowly off the ledge, wincing as the frigid waves reached her thighs. She leaned against the slick cave wall for support, stones sharp on her palms. Moving one slow step at a time, Sara felt her way along in the wavering glow. The soft radiance seemed to pulse around her, emitted from colonies of bioluminescent algae clinging to the submerged rocks. Sara's scientific mind flickered with questions even as her heart hammered with fear. This cave was incredible, hidden beneath the stormy Pacific swells. Sara lost track of how long she staggered through the glowing passageways. Time stretched on while the cave remained endless, tunnels branching and twisting. Sara grew lightheaded with fatigue, pausing often to rest. But she couldn't give up her search for the surface. Just as Sara despaired this labyrinth was inescapable, she turned a corner and froze. Ahead, the milky light illuminated a grotto opening up to the ocean. Moonlight filtered down from above, revealing clouds still swirling across the night sky. Hope surged in Sara's chest. She dragged herself painfully toward freedom, heedless of the sharp rocks tearing her feet. But suddenly, a dark shape shot up, blocking her path. Sara recoiled, pulse skyrocketing. The shadow drifted closer, resolving into a humanoid torso with long, tangled hair. But where legs should be was instead a powerful tail, black scales glinting. The creature's golden eyes fixed on Sara as she hovered silently. A mermaid. Sara's mind reeled in disbelief. She must be hallucinating from her ordeal. Mermaids were mythical beings, not marine biology. But the weight of the creature's gaze felt terrifyingly real. The mermaid circled Sara, her skeletal tail lazily rippling. Sara's instincts screamed danger, but she was cornered. When the mermaid reached for her, Sara lashed out frantically. Her blows glanced off hard muscle beneath cold skin. In a blur, the mermaid seized Sara's wrists, sharp nails digging in. She stared into Sara's eyes, her voice resonating mentally. "You cannot leave. We have awaited one like you, lonely sister. Now you will join us." Sara struggled desperately, but the mermaid overpowered her. She dragged Sara down into the glowing depths, golden gaze filled with a sorrowful purpose. Sara's terrified screams bubbled uselessly as the abyss swallowed her. She was lost. The mermaid pulled Sara deep into the glittering cave system, far from the tantalizing glimpse of the surface. Sara thrashed and fought, but the creature's grip was unbreakable. Her powerful tail propelled them effortlessly through the winding tunnels. Sara's lungs burned for air as the glow of the algae faded. How much longer could she hold out? Spots danced in her vision when the mermaid finally halted, releasing her. Sara doubled over, coughing and gagging as precious bubbles escaped her lips. Just as her strength expired, the mermaid grasped Sara's shoulders, buoying her up into a pocket of air. Sara gasped gratefully, dragging oxygen into her screaming chest. But her relief was short-lived. She huddled on the submerged rock, peering warily at her captor. The mermaid's skeletal visage was even more unsettling in the dimness. The fin-like frills behind her ears wavered like tattered seaweed. She watched Sara with ancient eyes glowing from the depths of her gaunt face. When she spoke, her voice resonated once more inside Sara's mind. Be calm. You are safe here. The air pockets in these caves will sustain you, as they have sustained us. Us? Sara's heart stuttered, wondering how many more mermaids lurked in this endless labyrinth. She eyed the creature distrustfully. Why did you bring me here? Please, just let me go back to my world. The mermaid smiled sadly, revealing rows of jagged teeth. I cannot. We have been alone for countless moons. Our sisterhood is dying without new blood. She lifted a talon to graze Sara's cheek. You are the one we have waited for. Your loneliness called to us from afar. Sara knocked the hand away, shuddering. I'm not some orphan for you to abduct. People will come searching for me. The mermaid shook her head, black hair swirling. None will find you here. This place is hidden even from our kind. But it will shelter you once the transformation is complete. Transformation? Sara's blood turned to ice. What are you talking about? She scanned the submerged cave frantically, looking for any means of escape. But there was nothing besides the mermaid's shimmering tail. Willing or not, you will join us, the mermaid rasped. The venom has already entered your veins. Sara's neck throbbed where Mermaid's nails had pierced her skin. The wounds wept a faint luminescence visible even in the darkness. Horror clutched Sara in its cold embrace. Please, don't do this. I don't want to become a monster. This time the mermaid bared her fangs in a hiss. Is our form so abhorrent to you? So be it. We care not for the opinion of humans. Her powerful tail lashed, churning the water. The change will be painful. But soon you will understand it is a gift. With that, the mermaid grasped Sara's wrist and bit down hard. Sara screamed as burning venom injected into her bloodstream. Her veins glowed under her skin as the toxin spread. The pain was excruciating, unlike anything Sara experienced before. She thrashed in the mermaid's iron grip as spasms racked her body. It felt like her legs were being torn apart and fused back together. Sara could only scream hoarsely until her voice gave out. When the initial agony finally passed, Sara sobbed weakly. She didn't have to look to know what had become of her legs. The weight and constriction of a tail confirmed her worst fears. The mermaid released Sara's arms, now sporting talons of her own. There, lonely sister. You are one of us. Sara pressed back against the cave wall, this half-submerged perch all that remained of her human world. Silvery scales now covered her tail, glinting faintly. She buried her face in her clawed hands, body shaking with grief for all she had lost. Sara didn't know how much time passed as she huddled in mute despair on her lonely rock outcrop. Minutes stretched into hours in the chilling darkness of the underwater cave. She kept her eyes clenched shut, still unable to accept the alien tail trailing beneath her in the icy water. This couldn't be real. Maybe she was locked in some nightmare coma, her body still lost to the stormy sea above. But the ache in her transfigured flesh felt agonizingly real. Sara suppressed a sob, tears leaking from under her lids. A soft splash disturbed the water. Sara's eyes flew open, claws flexing instinctively. But it was only her captor returned, those mournful golden eyes studying her. The pain fades quickly for our kind, the mermaid rasped. Soon you will glory in the strength of your new form. I didn't want this, Sara choked out, fresh anger kindling in her heartache. You've taken everything from me. The mermaid's gaze remained pitiless. I understand your sorrow. But there is no going back now. This is the path fate wove for you. Sara's tail lashed in futile frustration, churning the water around her perch. She froze at the instinctive motion, heart pounding. The mermaid nodded approvingly. Good. Your new flesh learns quickly. Now come, meet the rest of our coven. They are eager to welcome you. Sara recoiled, pressing back against the rocks. I'm not going anywhere with you. The mermaid studied her sadly. Meet them you must. The change binds you to the coven through a powerful magic. It will compel you, even against your wishes. Sara's mind reeled, remembering the mermaid's claim that she was transforming Sara against her will. What other vile powers did these creatures possess? Before she could protest further, the mermaid grasped Sara's wrist and pulled her from her ledge. Sara thrashed on instinct, but her tail moved in tandem with the mermaid, propelling them steadily through the glowing caves. Sara quickly lost all sense of direction. They swam for what felt like miles until the mermaid drew them up into another air pocket inside a massive cavern. Sara broke the surface, senses on high alert. Her heart sank at the sight of a whole gathering of mermaids awaiting her. Their bioluminescent scales cast an eerie glow over the sinister tableau. Empty eye sockets and hungry grins adorned their skeletal faces. Sara shrank back, but her captor held her fast. Sisters, behold our newborn kin, the mermaid proclaimed. She shook Sara's arm. Tell them your name. Sara kept her lips stubbornly sealed. The surrounding mermaids hissed, their interest quickly turning threatening. Sara's captor tightened her grip warningly. I am Sara, she finally relinquished through clenched teeth. Welcome, Sara, the mermaids chorused. They susurrated through the water, extending their claws to touch her. Sara recoiled from their sinister fascination. How can you do this, she pleaded to her captor. Transforming humans against their will? The mermaid sighed. Once, long ago, our coven gladly initiated willing humans. But none have sought us in ages. We linger here forgotten, our blood weakening. You are our only hope of survival. Sara surveyed the empty cavern, realization dawning. This place, it's a tomb, isn't it? How many have you brought here never to return? The mermaids exchanged unsettling grins. Finally, her captor spoke. More than can be counted. Their bones offer comfort when the silence grows too deep. Sara followed their gaze upward in dawning horror. Forming the cavern ceiling were thousands of human skeletons fused together into macabre structures. Some seemed centuries old, while others appeared freshly picked clean. Sara clasped a hand to her mouth, choking back bile. The mermaid's tomb was to be her own, she was now imprisoned here forever. Sara floated numbly as the mermaids swarmed around her. Their talons raked her skin, tasting her flesh. They hummed old songs in warped underwater melodies. Sara cringed away, but she was trapped in their midst. Eventually, the mermaids grew bored, losing interest in the dazed newcomer. One by one they drifted back into the lonely labyrinth, until only Sara's captor remained. You should rest, the mermaid rasped. The transformation sapped much of your strength. Follow me to the sleeping caves. Too exhausted to argue, Sara trailed after her into the gloomy tunnels. The mermaid led her to a small grotto, its floor lined with kelp. Ancient symbols decorated the walls, their meaning lost to time. We sleep here in cycles, the mermaid explained. The magic in the stones will soothe away your pain. Sara curled up on the prickly kelp, turning her back on the mermaid. She had no intention of sleeping. She needed to find a way to escape before her captor returned. But the mermaid lingered, humming softly. Sara's eyelids grew heavier against her will. You feel the pull of our spell now, the mermaid murmured. Rest, lonely sister. Tomorrow your new life begins. Sara tried to resist, but a tide of magic washed through her mind, urging her into darkness. Finally, she slipped into unconsciousness. When Sara awoke, she wasn't sure how much time had passed. Glowing fungi on the walls cast a dim ambience. The mermaid was gone. Sara slipped from the grotto, swimming silently through the tunnels. She prayed she could find a branching path back to the surface. But the labyrinth twisted endlessly, all directions looking the same. Sara grew frantic. She couldn't stay trapped down here. Turning a corner, Sara at last spotted a mermaid drifting ahead. Keeping her distance, Sara secretly followed, hoping the creature would lead her out. But the tunnel only wound deeper until an eerie red glow appeared. A horrific stench hit Sara, rotting and metallic. She peered into a vast cavern filled with the glow of lava bubbling up from the earth's core. The mermaid glided to the shore of the subterranean lake. There she was met by Sara's captor, who grasped the other mermaid's shoulders. To Sara's horror, her captor suddenly bit down savagely on the other's throat. Blood billowed out as the mermaid thrashed weakly, until her luminous eyes went dark. Sara stifled a scream. She watched in dismay as her captor feasted on the mermaid's flesh. So this was the gruesome fate that awaited any sisters who outlived their usefulness. Sara backed away slowly, but a pebble came loose, hitting the water with a plink. The cannibalistic mermaid looked up, blood dripping from her jaws. A cruel delight lit her golden eyes when she spotted Sara frozen in terror. Trying to escape, are we? The mermaid purred, swimming closer. I'm afraid the labyrinth only opens to those with a connection to our magic. And you cannot sever the bond except through death. Sara turned to flee, but her captor grasped her wrist, long nails digging in. Please, I won't tell anyone. Sara sobbed. The mermaid smirked. I know. You will never leave here alive. She dragged Sara closer to the bubbling lava pit. Sara thrashed and screamed, but the monster was too strong. This would be her tomb, her bones lost forever. But just as the mermaid moved to hurl Sara into the pit, a thunderous boom shook the cavern. Chunks of rock rained down as a breach opened overhead. Sunlight speared through the cracks, dispelling the nightmare gloom. The mermaid shrieked in pain, releasing Sara to shield her sensitive eyes. Sara didn't hesitate, she shot towards freedom faster than she ever swam before. Behind her echoed the mermaid's howls of rage. Sara propelled herself desperately through the narrow crevice leading up to the blessed sunlight. She squeezed through tight spots that shredded her skin, frantic to escape before the murderous mermaid could pursue her. At last Sara breached the surface, nearly weeping at the sight of open ocean and blue sky above. She swam hard away from the nightmarish caverns, half expecting skeletal hands to grab her legs and drag her back down. Only when the waves carried Sara far from that terrible rift in the seabed did she dare to rest. She floated half-stunned, struggling to believe she was actually free. The sunlight warmed her chilled skin, soothing away the memory of endless cold and darkness. But her relief was short-lived. Sara's new inhuman body felt alien and awkward. She peered down at the sinuous tail trailing behind her, glinting silver. Revulsion twisted her gut. She didn't belong in this skin. Sara dove below the surface, seeking anything familiar to ground herself. But the ocean floor here was only barren rock and waving kelp forests. No sign of her beloved whales or the Aurora's wreckage. She was well and truly lost. Wandering aimlessly in the depths, Sara stumbled across a small reef. Colorful fish scattered as she approached. But beneath a rocky outcrop, Sara spotted movement too slow to be a fish. Cautiously, Sara crept forward. Curled up inside the reef was another mermaid. Though her skin clung to her bones, she seemed younger than Sara's captors in the tomb. The girl stared at Sara with sunken violet eyes. Hello? Sara called hesitantly. The mermaid recoiled, a faint hiss escaping her lips. Sara held up her hands. It's okay, I won't hurt you. She hesitated. Did they trap you down there too? The girl watched Sara warily before giving one slow nod. Sara's heart ached with shared pain. I'm Sara. What's your name? The girl hesitated before whispering, Nerissa. Her voice was hoarse from disuse. Nerissa, Sara repeated gently. Those monsters had me imprisoned as well. But I managed to escape. Come with me, I'll help you get away too. Nerissa yearned towards Sara's extended hand before drawing back uncertainly. The matriarch. She whispered fearfully. She almost killed me, but I got away from her, Sara said. She has no power over us now. Come on. Nerissa slowly took Sara's hand. Together they swam up into the sunlight, leaving that nightmarish place behind. Sara didn't know what the future held, but she vowed to protect this newly freed sister. They traveled for hours until Sara spied a small deserted island in the distance. The two mermaids cautiously approached the sandy beach. Sara hadn't dared to hope she might find land, let alone possible salvation. Can you change forms? Sara asked Nerissa urgently. Walk on land to get help? Nerissa shook her head, eyes round with fright. Matriarch never taught me. Too young. Sara cursed internally but tried not to show her disappointment. She surveyed the empty beach. We'll hide here for now. No one comes to this island. The two mermaids slipped into a tide pool amongst the rocks, out of sight from the land. They huddled together as the sun sank below the horizon, bathing them in shadow. Sara clung to this new companion, taking comfort that she was no longer alone. Though she didn't know what to do, she silently vowed once more to protect Nerissa. After a life trapped in darkness, she deserved someone to watch over her now. They would survive this somehow. Sara refused to let the tomb claim any more lost souls. Sara woke, momentarily confused by her surroundings. Bright tropical sunlight filtering through clear water replaced the gloomy bioluminescent glow of the underwater caves. Then memory came crashing back, her desperate escape, finding Nerissa, hiding on this deserted island. Sara sat up, peering around the tide pool anxiously. Had it all been some cruel dream? But no, her new mermaid tale confirmed it was horribly real. At least Nerissa still slumbered nearby, silver hair drifting in the gentle current. Sara slipped silently from their hiding spot, not wanting to disturb the girl's fitful rest. She swam slowly around the island, taking stock of her new domain. Vibrant coral reefs hosted dazzling tropical fish who darted away from this intruder. Lush kelp forests swayed, drawing Sara into their green depths. She located a sunken shipwreck, its wooden ribs picked clean long ago. Sara's heart ached imagining the doomed sailors, so far from home. At least her death would have been swift in the stormy sea. A kinder fate than the living entombment the coven intended for her. Circling back, Sara broke the surface near the island's sandy beach. She tasted the air, shocked by how different it smelled above water. Earthier and drier, yet still clung with the scent of brine. Sara yearned for the simple joy of strolling the beach under the sun. Would she ever walk on land again? A seabird's cry drew Sara's gaze upward. The wheeling gull sparked a memory. She knew birds like those followed fishing vessels out to sea. Heart quickening, Sara scanned the horizon and spotted a small trawler passing in the distance. She waved her arms and tail frantically, but they were too far to spot her. The ship soon disappeared over the glittering horizon. Sara sank back into the water, defeated. How would she and Nerissa ever get home? Home. Sara hadn't let herself dwell on everything she lost. Her research, her friends, Noah, did they still search for her? Or had they given her up for dead after the storm? Either way, how could she return to that world like this? No, Sara realized. The coven had stolen her old life forever. She would never study whales again, or joke with Noah on the Aurora. Her only focus now was protecting her newfound sister. Speaking of, Sara realized Nerissa had awakened and drifted over silently. The young mermaid watched Sara with those two old violet eyes that had seen centuries pass trapped in endless night. The matriarch will find me again, Nerissa whispered, more statement than question. Sara clasped the girl's hands. I won't let her take you back. We watch out for each other now. Nerissa nodded solemnly. In that moment, Sara was reminded how young her new sister had been when the coven stole her life. Barely more than a child. "Are you hungry?" Sara asked gently. "Come, I'll show you the best seashell hunting." Nerissa managed a hesitant smile. Together they dove back into the shimmering reefs, leaving the human world above the waves behind. This was their life now. The lost sisters. Sara drifted aimlessly through the moonlit water, unable to sleep. Nerissa dozed tucked away safely in the tidal, but rest eluded Sara. Her mind churned with worries about their uncertain future. Would they remain trapped here on this island forever? Were they truly free from the coven's sinister grasp? Needing to clear her head, Sara swam slowly out into open water, leaving the island's silhouette behind. She turned onto her back, gazing up at the brilliant spray of stars. The celestial patterns looked the same as always, coldly indifferent to her upended world. At least the gentle bob of the waves soothed her fried nerves. Sara's new mermaid body undulated gracefully to maintain position, almost without conscious thought. She was already growing accustomed to her changed physique. Sara closed her eyes, seeking that mental space whales occupied when they slipped into rest mode. She needed to approach this rationally, make a plan. But logic failed in a situation so far beyond reason. Unbidden, Sara's mind turned to her old life now lost forever, her research, friends, home. She glimpsed it all as if looking through a window, present but untouchable. The ache of nostalgia pierced her heart. No. Sara forcefully turned her thoughts back to the present. The old Sara was gone, she had to accept that. Survival depended on letting go of the past. She and Nerissa were all that mattered now. Still, an instinctual part of Sara's altered brain seemed to strain for a connection no longer there. She felt the phantom tendrils of some magical mental link yearning to reattach. With sudden dread, Sara realized it must be the dark bond to the coven the matriarch mentioned. When she transformed Sara against her will, that evil magic tried to bind them. Sara was grateful the link seemed severed in her escape. She concentrated on blocking out the creeping shadows, reaffirming her vow to protect Nerissa. They would start a new life here, just the two of them. Sara refused to let the coven claim more victims. The stars offered no answers, but Sara took comfort in their familiarity. Some things endured, whatever tragedies might befall below. With that thought buoying her, Sara turned back towards the island that was now her home. Nerissa still slept peacefully in the tidal, silver hair floating around her. Sara settled on the rocky bottom nearby, keeping watch over her new sister. Her own eyes finally grew heavy, soothed by the gently swaying fronds of kelp. Tomorrow she would scour the island anew, seeking any sign of inhabitants or passing ships. But for now, Sara allowed the waves to carry her into dreams untroubled by monsters. This island was their haven, and she would let no one violate its sanctuary. Sara awoke to weak sunlight filtering into the tidal. She sat up, wincing at the throbbing in her skull. Her dreams had grown troubled and bizarre as the night wore on. Sara hoped it was just restlessness in their unfamiliar surroundings, not some resurgence of the coven's mental hold over her. Nearby, Nerissa still slept curled up on a rocky perch. Sara slipped silently from the pool so as not to disturb the girl's slumber. She decided to explore the island's interior, searching for any freshwater springs that might sustain life. Pulling herself onto the beach, Sara paused to take in the sunrise. The sky blazed red and gold, reflecting off the glassy waves lapping the sand. Sara sighed bitterly. How she used to love walking on the beach in the early hours, collecting shells or admiring birds. Simple joys now lost to her. Useless to dwell on what she couldn't change. Sara turned toward the island interior, dense with vegetation. She crawled awkwardly through the surf, then dragged herself across sand and pebbles into the tree line. Unaccustomed to maneuvering on land, her progress was slow and exhausting. The shade of palm fronds offered respite from the beating sun. Sara rested a moment, then continued dragging her cumbersome tail further inland. She listened for any sound of flowing water over the chatter of birds and insects. But the island appeared deserted. Sara was attempting to navigate around a log when a sudden scream of terror shattered the stillness. Nerissa. Heart-lurching, Sara abandoned caution and let her new mermaid strength plow through any obstacles. She had to get back to the Tidapools. Sara burst from the trees just as the matriarch's skeletal head broke the pool's surface, tangled hair streaming. One claw gripped the thrashing Nerissa while her other talons reached for Sara. "You escaped once, but I have come to reclaim what is mine," the matriarch growled. Sara froze momentarily, then hurled herself into the pool, clawing at the matriarch's face and arms. "Let her go. She doesn't belong to you." The matriarch just laughed, tightening her hold on Nerissa, who wailed and sobbed. "None who bear my mark can ever be free." To Sara's horror, she pressed a glowing palm to Nerissa's chest. "Feel it awaken inside you, child." "No." Sara screamed hoarsely. She clutched at Nerissa as the young mermaid's eyes rolled back, body going limp. The deed was done, the matriarch had reforged her twisted bond. With another harsh laugh, the matriarch released Nerissa's now unconscious form into Sara's arms. "You both return with me to the coven now." Her cold gaze fixed on Sara. "And this time, I'll ensure you never slip my leash again." Sara clutched Nerissa's limp body, overwhelmed by despair. She had failed her sister, and now they were doomed to that living death together. Unless... As the matriarch reached for Sara, she acted on pure instinct. Her new mermaid claws seized one of the jagged shells scattered across the pool's floor. With a feral scream, Sara slashed with all her strength at the matriarch's extended arm, severing it from her body in a spray of black blood. The matriarch's shriek shook the island. Sara wasted no time, she took Nerissa and swam hard for the open ocean. But the matriarch's rage echoed behind them, swearing bloody vengeance. Sara swam until her muscles burned and the island was a speck on the horizon. Only then did she dare stop, cradling Nerissa's limp body as she broke the surface. The young mermaid remained unconscious, but still breathed steadily. "Nerissa, please wake up," Sara pleaded, shaking her gently. But the girl did not stir. Whatever evil magic the matriarch used to reforge their bond had pulled Nerissa's mind deep down into darkness. Clutching her comatose sister, Sara dove beneath the waves once more. She had to find somewhere to safely hide Nerissa while she figured out how to break the coven spell for good. As the light faded, Sara's acute mermaid vision picked out the silhouette of a sunken shipwreck in the murky depths. She approached cautiously, but no creature stirred within its rotted hull. It would have to do for now. Sara found a small chamber towards the ship's stern, still somewhat intact. She positioned Nerissa gently on the sandy floor, tucking her own fins safely out of sight. Sara pressed her hand to the unconscious girl's pallid cheek. "I'm so sorry, Nerissa," she whispered brokenly. "I failed you." Sara's shoulders shook with dry, heaving sobs. She had vowed to protect her new sister, but now the coven's evil once again flowed through the girl's veins. When her grief finally passed, Sara knew she couldn't give up hope. The matriarch still lived despite her gruesome injury, and she would track them here eventually. Sara had to find a way to break the spell, and then end the matriarch's evil for good. Settling herself in the entryway where she could watch for threats, Sara racked her brains trying to think of some way to fight back. Her mind turned again to her long-lost research. What knowledge could she adapt from marine mammals? The whales had taught her much about community, communication, and tool use. Sara herself now possessed a Syren's sharper senses and speed in the water. Perhaps those natural gifts held the key to saving Nerissa. Sara slipped out to explore the wreck and nearby seabed. She gathered an assortment of shells, stones, twisted metal shards, anything that might prove useful for defense or breaking spells. Stockpiling her supplies in the little room, Sara rigged a crude trap across the entrance and hunkered down to keep watch. She waited for long anxious hours, but nothing disturbed the silent ruins. Eventually exhaustion claimed Sara, leaving Nerissa to stare sightlessly into the gloom beneath the waves. They were safe for now in this forgotten graveyard. But when the matriarch came for them again, Sara would be ready. She would use every natural weapon at her disposal to protect her newfound sister, no matter the cost. The coven's reign of evil would end by her hand. Sara jerked awake, momentarily confused by her surroundings. Had the past days been some bizarre nightmare? But the sight of her glittering mermaid tail and Nerissa's unconscious form dispelled that fleeting hope. The filtered sunlight beyond the shipwreck's cracked porthole told Sara she had slept through the night undisturbed. It seemed the matriarch had yet to pick up their trail. But for how long could they evade her wrath? Sara checked on Nerissa, who showed no signs of waking. She still breathed steadily despite her vacant stare. Sara squeezed her limp hand. "I'll get you back, just hold on." Leaving Nerissa hidden safely inside the wreck, Sara ventured out to gather more materials she could use as weapons. She ripped jagged metal shards from the ship's ruined hull and bound them to lengths of driftwood as rudimentary spears. Arms laden, Sara was turning back when a flicker of movement caught her eye. She darted behind a large piece of debris, peering around it cautiously. Had the coven found them already? But it wasn't a mermaid approaching the wreckage. It was a human man, his powerful strokes carrying him through the swirling silt. As he neared, Sara noticed he wore simple clothing and had a leather satchel slung across his back. Sara shrank down, watching the intruder warily. She didn't dare reveal herself, but the sight of a fellow human after so long kindled a faint spark of hope inside her. Could he be her chance to save Nerissa? The man swam through a jagged hole into the main cabin. Sara crept close and listened intently. She could hear him rummaging inside the ruined hull. For what, she couldn't tell. After a few minutes, the man emerged clutching something. As he turned to swim upward, Sara caught a glimpse of his profile, handsome features, coppery hair, beard peppered with gray. About her age, or perhaps a few years older. More importantly, Sara realized this chance encounter with a human man so far from land could not be mere coincidence. It had to be fate. She needed to reveal herself and seek his aid against the coven. The man paused, treading water while securing his satchel and prize. Sara slowly emerged from concealment, keeping her hands raised so as not to startle him. But at the sight of her, the man's eyes blew wide in shock. "Please," Sara called out. "I mean you no harm. Don't be frightened." The man blinked hard, as if doubting his own vision. "A mermaid," he breathed in wonder. "But how?" "It's a long story," Sara said gently. She swam a bit closer. The man tensed but did not flee. "My name is Sara." "What's yours?" He hesitated. "Leander." His voice was rich with warmth and compassion. Sara's heart quickened hopefully. Surely one with such gentle eyes couldn't mean them ill will. "Leander," Sara repeated with a tentative smile. "I need your help." Sara floated before Leander, heart hammering as she prepared to share her tragic tale. She prayed he would believe her incredible story and offer aid. His kind eyes watched her intently, more intrigued than afraid. Taking a deep breath, Sara described her transformation at the hands of the mermaid coven and her escape with Nerissa. Leander listened gravely as she told of the matriarch recapturing them, placing Nerissa back under her evil thrall. "That's why I desperately need help breaking their spell," Sara finished urgently. "Can you use any magic to free my sister?" Leander swam closer. "You have suffered much, Sara. But fate brought us together. I know magic that can defeat this coven." Joy surged within Sara. "Truly? Then please, help me save Nerissa." "I will," Leander vowed solemnly. "My people have battled dark forces like this coven for generations. I can render talismans to break their hold." Sara nearly wept with relief. "Thank you, kind stranger. Let's go quickly." She led Leander down into the wreck, showing him Nerissa's comatose form. The man's brow furrowed as he examined her. "Yes, I sense the evil spell's taint. But reversing it will take special materials." "What do we need?" "I'll retrieve anything," Sara promised. Leander described obscure ingredients: volcanic sands, kraken ink, unicorn whale tears. Sara's enthusiasm dimmed slightly, realizing these fantastical items could be found nowhere in the mortal realm. Sensing her doubt, Leander gave a reassuring smile. "My people have gathered stores of such rare artifacts. I can return home and collect what we need. Home. Sara realized she knew nothing about this man beyond his name. Where exactly do you come from, Leander? His eyes took on a faraway look. My island home lies beyond mortal sight. We dwell there in harmony with all ocean life, using our magic to protect the sea's balance. Sara bit her lip uncertainly. His home sounded idyllic, yet somehow unearthly. But she had little choice but to trust Leander. How long until you can acquire the ingredients? A few days to make the voyage, he estimated. Keep your sister hidden here where the coven won't sense her presence. Reluctantly, Sara nodded. She hated letting Nerissa remain captive to evil magic a moment longer, but had to be patient for the cure. Hurry back swiftly, please. Leander took Sara's hands in his own rough, calloused palms. I swear I will return. No good magic-wielder could ignore the suffering inflicted upon you. His deep brown eyes burned with sincerity. Sara's breath caught at his solemn vow. She watched Leander disappear into the glittering sea, fervently praying he spoke true. Their last hope for freedom swam with him toward the horizon. The wait for Leander's return crawled by. Sara passed the anxious days gathering food for herself and Nerissa, though her sister remained lost in enchanted slumber. She hoped desperately Leander's magic talismans could revive the girl's lifeless spirit. When not caring for Nerissa, Sara worked to reinforce the protections around their sanctuary. She wove in kelp to disguise the wreck's entrance and strung shells that would clatter together if disturbed. But the greatest threat still lurked unseen, the matriarch. Sara constantly expected to hear the monster's screech echoing over the waves. She jumped at shadows, anticipating skeletal claws to come grasping out of the gloom. So Sara nearly yelped in fright when a hand suddenly touched her shoulder. She whirled, claws bared, only to meet Leander's stoic gaze. Joy surged in her chest. You've returned. Do you have the cure? Sara already saw the bulging satchel slung over his shoulder. Leander held up a vial of shimmering liquid. The elixir is ready. Once Nerissa drinks, it will break the coven's spell. Eagerly, Sara led him inside the wreck to where Nerissa still laid motionless. Leander knelt and gently lifted the girl's head, bringing the vial to her lips. The potion slid down her throat. For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then Nerissa gasped, back arching off the floor. Her vacant eyes cleared, darting around in bewilderment. Nerissa. Sara cried joyously, clutching the girl close. Nerissa returned the embrace, body shaking with dry sobs. Leander watched with a satisfied smile. The evil magic is purged from her spirit now. She is free. Thank you, Sara whispered, tears of gratitude stinging her eyes. She turned to Nerissa. It's all right, sister. We're safe now. Nerissa just clung to Sara, still overcome with shock. But color was returning to her wan cheeks, the unnatural gauntness filling out. Sara stroked her hair, reassuring her until the panic subsided. Once Nerissa seemed calm, Sara related all that transpired in her absence, the island, Leander's aid. The girl listened solemnly, understanding the tender trust binding the three of them now. What do we do when she comes for us again? Nerissa finally whispered. Sara squeezed her shoulder. Now we have the power to fight back. Leander drew more vials from his satchel. These contain spells to bind even the strongest dark magic. The coven will never prey on innocence again. His confident words bolstered Sara's spirit. With Nerissa restored and Leander's magic on their side, they finally had hope of ending the coven forever. The coming battle would be difficult, but Sara now knew with certainty that the sea could be made safe once more. Evil would not claim 2 more innocent lives today. Sara, Nerissa, and Leander spent hours planning their attack against the coven. Though still weakened, the matriarch's wrath would not be easily defeated. But at last, they had the means to break her twisted hold over the ocean. Leander revealed more of his magical knowledge, teaching Sara's untrained Syren skills to craft spells. He gifted her potions to cloak their presence from the matriarch's sinister senses. Lastly, he pressed a stone amulet shaped like a whale into Sara's hand. For protection, Leander murmured. His calloused fingers lingered over hers. Sara's cheek grew warm, but she had no time to contemplate her feelings. Under cover of darkness, the trio set out for the island, Leander propelling them rapidly forward with an enchantment. Sara's nerves hummed as the landmass grew closer. This cursed place had been her prison, soon it would become the coven's tomb. They breached the rocky coast a distance from the tide pools, not wanting to alert the coven. Sara expected to find the matriarch already restored to health, but the caves appeared vacant. Perhaps their luck held. I don't sense her magic here, Leander whispered. But stay sharp. Together they slipped into the glowing tunnels, following the ancient sigils deeper inward. The silence pressed ominously. Had the coven fled after Sara's rebellion? A piercing shriek shattered the stillness, the matriarch, her voice brimming with madness. Sara's blood chilled as the mermaid appeared from the shadows ahead. Hideously, she had reshaped her severed arm into a jagged spear of bone. Black blood still leaked from the grotesque appendage. With a guttural cry, the matriarch shot toward them, spear aimed at Sara's heart. Sara tore a vial from her satchel and hurled it at the matriarch. The glass shattered against her chest, liquid smoking. The mermaid collapsed, howling and clawing at herself. Quickly, before she shakes off the spell. Leander yelled. He and Nerissa rushed to restrain the thrashing matriarch. Sara swam forward, drawing the obsidian blade Leander had gifted her. Focusing all her rage and pain, she drove it deep into the matriarch's chest. The matriarch let loose an unearthly wail, back arching and tail spasming. Then she went limp, ancient golden eyes empty. Sara floated back, exhausted but exhilarated. It's done, she whispered. Her reign ends here today. Leander wrapped a comforting arm around Sara's shoulders. Nerissa clung to her waist, smiling through tears. No words were needed in that profound moment of freedom. With the matriarch defeated, Sara knew the surviving members of the coven would scatter and fade, their evil broken at the source. Balance could be restored below the waves. Leander and Nerissa turned back toward the surface, leaving the cursed caverns behind forever. But Sara lingered a moment more, saying farewell to all she had suffered here. When she finally swam up into light, it was with joyful hope in her heart. The weeks after defeating the coven passed in a blur. With Nerissa restored and the matriarch slain, Sara allowed herself to feel hope about the future. She, her sister, and Leander took refuge in a sheltered cove, removed from the evil taint of the coven. Leander continued teaching Sara to refine her fledgling Syren abilities. She learned to manipulate water, craft basic spells, and transform her tail into temporary legs when she ventured ashore. The magic came more naturally every day. Nerissa also progressed swiftly, freed from the stagnation of the coven's lair. She evolved from a timid girl into a bright, playful young Syren. Sara was reminded of her own younger sisters so long ago, now forever lost to her. In idyllic days spent exploring the cove, Sara grew closer with Leander as well. He never pried about her past life, but listening to his own stories filled the painful gaps in Sara's heart. She found herself longing for his deep, rumbling laugh and the crinkles around his eyes when he smiled. But at night, doubts often crept in as Sara rested beneath the moonsilver water. She could never truly go back to the human world or the plans she'd made there. Her old self felt more distant every day. One night Sara surfaced from restless dreams to find Leander watching the stars overhead. He smiled gently as she swam over. Can't sleep either? Sara shook her head. Just thinking about the future. I can't remain a mermaid forever. Leander considered this seriously. Do you wish to return to human form? I don't know. Sara admitted. I want to study whales again, be part of that world. But I've changed so much now. She trailed her fingers through the water. Either life feels like it would only be half living. Leander took her hand. The coven forced you into an impossible choice. But perhaps I can offer a third option. He hesitated. Come live with me, in my people's realm. Sara's eyes widened. She opened her mouth, but words failed her swarming thoughts. Sensing her turmoil, Leander squeezed her hand. You needn't decide now. Just know you will always have a home with me, if you want it. He kissed Sara's knuckles gently before slipping back beneath the waves, leaving her staring after in shocked joy. For the first time since her transformation, the future held more wonder than sorrow. Sara's mind churned with Leander's unexpected proposal. To live among his mysterious people sounded idyllic, yet would mean leaving behind the human world forever. She wrestled with the choice over the following days. Leander gave Sara space, sensing her turmoil. But she missed his sturdy presence and thoughtful counsel as she struggled with isolation. Nerissa was too carefree now to understand Sara's melancholic longing for a lost past. Sara passed solitary hours scouring the cove, seeking answers its life could provide. The creatures here remained oblivious to her inner conflict, following ingrained cycles of feeding, breeding, surviving. Watching the animals go about their instinctual lives, Sara realized she envied their simplicity. As a human, her advanced mind compelled her to grapple with existential questions of purpose and belonging. A luxury wild things rarely indulged. But the same human intelligence also allowed Sara to appreciate beauty and meaning beyond basic needs. She couldn't merely surrender her higher faculties for blissful ignorance. Her identity was too hard-won after the coven tried stripping it away. These thoughts chased endlessly until Sara grew frustrated with her indecisiveness. She couldn't waver in limbo forever. The time had come to make a choice, however difficult. That night Sara asked Nerissa to leave her alone at moonrise. Her sister obeyed reluctantly, sensing the gravity of this solitary vigil. Sara perched on a rocky outcrop, watching the tides ebb and flow as she organized her turbulent thoughts. The allure of Leander's offer still tempted her deeply. But though Sara was now Syren, her human heart still drummed in her breast. She couldn't abandon that world and old self yet, altered as she was. There was so much left to do and rediscover with her second chance at life. Resigned yet peaceful, Sara dove into the shimmering water. She would tell Leander her choice come dawn, but for now, took joy in the dance of light over sand as she swam, at home in two worlds. When sunrise crested over the waves, Sara found Leander awaiting her expectantly. She told him of her thoughtful reflections and reluctant choice. Though disappointment shadowed his features, he nodded graciously. I understand the call your old life still holds. You have ever been wise, Sara. No, my offer remains open, whenever you are ready. Leander held her hands a long moment. Sara hoped he could read the unspoken promise in her eyes, that their separated paths would someday reunite again. For now, she had Nerissa to care for and a human world to relearn. But Leander's patient love would be her compass through stormy seas ahead. All was not farewell forever. After Nerissa cried all her tears over Sara's choice to depart, she finally accepted her sister's decision. Sara's heart still clenched leaving the girl alone, but Nerissa was stronger now and eager to explore life beyond the coven's grasp. They vowed to see each other again someday. Sara set out to relearn the human world with purpose, though the task often seemed impossible. She took refuge along isolated coastlines, practicing transforming her mermaid tail into legs. The magic came easier with time, but still left her weak and disoriented. Returning to civilization posed even greater challenges. Sara's occasional trips to remote harbors and villages overwhelmed her senses. The modern world moved so fast, with inscrutable technology and customs. She feared she would never adapt. But Sara's resolve held firm. She painstakingly remembered human skills, using currency, vehicles, telephones. Her speech regained cadence and slang until she could pass unnoticed in fleeting public interactions. The ocean remained Sara's true haven. She never stayed inland long before needing its soothing embrace. Her closest connections were with aquatic life, who grew to trust her innate Syren affinity. The whales in particular seemed to sense a kinship, accepting Sara into their pods. Their graceful form stirred bittersweet memories of the career now lost to Sara. While part of her would always mourn that future, she soon realized new purpose teaching others about conserving marine life. Though not a formal researcher anymore, she could still spread awareness. Sara told the whales stories through artwork, writings, and photographs. She spoke to audiences from schoolchildren to conclaves of scientists about protecting fragile ocean ecosystems. Her passion moved hearts and swayed opinions in a way cold data never could. But always in quiet moments, Sara's thoughts drifted back to Leander across the sea. She missed his patient wisdom and steady companionship. The irregular letters they exchanged were her only solace. Leander never chided Sara's slow acclimation back to humanity. He understood her better than anyone, having walked between worlds himself. The day finally came when Sara woke transformed. She gazed at her legs with new acceptance, no longer fighting the in-between parts of herself. Syren abilities and human heart had fused into a singular spirit stronger than the sum of both. Sara was finally ready to seek the place she truly belonged. It was time to journey back to Leander and make her home by his side. The winds called, eager to reunite two souls destined long ago. Sara raced barefoot across the beach and dove joyfully into the waiting sea. Sara sliced through the surging ocean, retracing the route toward Leander's island sanctum. Without his company, the voyage now seemed twice as long, each stroke carrying her further from the human world she still loved. But there was no sadness, only joyful anticipation to reunite with the patient man who understood Sara's divided soul better than any. The lonely years apart had only strengthened her conviction that she belonged at Leander's side. When the verdant island finally appeared on the horizon, Sara's heart quickened, knowing Leander awaited her arrival. She swam hard those last miles, their promised future shimmering brighter with each fin kick. Yet as Sara drew closer, an ominous dread crept over her senses. The island sat too still and quiet beneath the blazing sun, lacking the vibrancy Leander described. She tasted menace tainting the very water. Fear lurching inside her, Sara breached the shallows near shore, and froze at the scene of devastation. Splintered hulls of ships and twisted artifacts littered the beaches. Further inland, smoke rose from collapsed dwellings. There was no sign of life. Leander! Sara screamed, though she felt the truth already in her heart. Enemy forces had destroyed this haven, scattering or slaying its peaceful inhabitants. Leander and his people were gone, all their wisdom and magic lost. Sara's grief quickly turned to rage. She would find whoever committed this atrocity and exact brutal justice. But first she must search for any survivors in need. Combing the ravaged coast revealed no one, though Sara refused to believe Leander perished. If any of his people survived, they retreated deep inland to sacred groves. Sara painfully dragged herself over land scarred by flames and battle. Leander, she cried hoarsely between the ravaged trees. Can you hear me? I'm here now. Only silence answered her desperate pleas. As the forest remained empty, Sara sank to the charred earth in despair. Though she had slain the Syren coven, evil still lurked in uncounted guises. And somewhere it yet survived, gloating over this massacre. There would be no happy reunion in paradise with Leander now. When Sara's grief finally numbed, cold purpose took its place. With her Syren abilities, she would become justice incarnate for the innocents slain here. There was nothing left to lose. She would not stop until the ones responsible paid tenfold. Jaw set, Sara rose and returned to the sea. She sensed darkness stirring somewhere beneath the waves. More dangerous than any natural predator, it called her home. If evil wanted war, she would bring it down upon them with all her rage. The hunt was on. Sara's grief transmuted to relentless wrath. No magic or army could withstand the coming tempest. She would see this island reborn, or die avenging it. Sara became vengeance incarnate, stalking the oceans relentlessly in search of those responsible for the island massacre. She tapped into Syren magics she'd sworn never to use, if they aided her hunt. The noble guardian Leander knew was gone, replaced by feral fury. No rumor was too small for Sara to pursue, no enemy too dangerous. She left scattered bodies and whispered legends of a deadly sea witch in her wake. But no amount of violence satisfied her burning hatred or eased the hollow ache of loss. In darker moments, Sara wondered if she had become the same evil she hunted. The lines between justice and vengeance blurred over her months of hunting. But always Leander's gentle face shone in her mind's eye, steeling her resolve again. She would not fail him in this final task. The trail went cold countless times, sending Sara spiraling back into despair. But she tensed at the slightest ripple of activity, knowing her enemy still lurked, gloating over past victory. Patience was not her strength, but she must bide her time playing this subtle game. Years passed in relentless pursuit. Sara lost herself so completely in her crusade that the human world faded to a half-remembered dream. She became more phantom than woman, existing only for the hunt. Until late one night, the phantom received a message it could not ignore. A Syren youth arrived at Sara's cold camp, extended family 1 or 2 times removed. His words sent long-dormant memories stirring. "Aunt Sara, you're needed back home. The island is restored, the people returned. We must finish rebuilding what was lost." Home. The concept cut like rusted metal through Sara's fog. She had no home, not since. But the young Syren showed no fear in the face of her harsh interrogation. He spoke earnestly of living descendants who remembered Sara, of her duty to help resurrect their community and culture, not forfeit herself to violence. Each word pierced Sara's heart like sea glass shards, painfully clearing away the cobwebs of hatred. She saw with awful clarity what she had almost become in her grief and rage. The people needed guidance to heal, not more death. When the Syren finished his plea, solemn eyes so like Leander's fixed on Sara, she wept for the first time since the massacre. She had failed them by abandoning wisdom for vengeance. But there was still time to make amends. With slow, wounded steps, Sara walked the path back from the brink. She surrendered dreams of blood and fury, instead nurturing her people's spark of hope. There would be no victory in darkness. And when finally their village stood proud again on the blessed island shore, Sara allowed a quiet contentment to settle in her heart once more. The hollow places grief carved were not filled, but life flourished on around them. That would be monument enough for those lost. It was over. Sara was home. Sara awoke before dawn, drawn by some nameless longing from her bed of soft kelp. She slipped past the sleeping village and swam silently out beyond the glow of homes and hearth fires. The ocean embraced her, alive with possibility in the hushed hours before daybreak. Sara floated on her back, gazing upward as the inky night sky faded to marine blue. She pondered how far she had journeyed since that first sunrise after her transformation so long ago. The years between held such pain and wonder, failure and triumph. Sara inhabited many roles, lost soul, avenger, guardian. But here, now, she was simply herself again after so long without anchor. It was bittersweet, losing so much to reclaim identity. As pink light crested over the waves, Sara swam toward the island's high cliffs to witness dawn rebirth the world. But when she breached the surface near the rocks, her breath caught at an unexpected silhouette. Leander sat watching the sunrise, eyes thoughtful beneath wind-tossed hair. He turned with a gentle smile, as if expecting her arrival. "It's you," Sara whispered, afraid to disturb this dream. But the hand Leander extended was warm and real around hers. He drew her up beside him onto the cliff ledge. "Forgive my absence. I lingered in deep healing until the village needed me." His voice held profound joy and deeper sorrow. Sara found no words to encompass the enormity of this reunion. She simply clung to him as the sun crested the horizon, bathing them in new light. The past could wait a bit longer. This moment was theirs. When the swelling tide eventually forced them back into the ocean, Leander halted Sara with a tender hand. "Will you stay?" Sara saw the promise in his eyes, of life and love, comfort and purpose. The halves of her soul fused wholly once more. "I'm home," she whispered. So they dove beneath the waves, swimming side by side. The water shimmered with motes of possibility, guiding them toward a future neither could clearly see. But together they would share its joys and burdens, no matter where the currents led. Their people and village awaited, eager to thrive with Sara's long-lost wisdom. But for now, Leander merely took her hand, content that she was finally home to stay.